I tell guys this all the time. You do not have to know the steps. You have to be willing to take the steps. Somebody is going to come along because of your willingness. You're going to start looking around, and they're going to be individuals who want to take you through observation, training, execution, and feedback, and will help you with the steps. Don't say, oh, well, I'm not doing it because I don't know the steps. That's the only requirement for those of you who are listening and not sure about what's happening next in your life. The only requirement right now, there will be more requirements, but the only one right now is that you have to want to take the steps.
Welcome to Just One Question with your host, Lion Flood. This podcast is brought to you by The Minority Report, where our goal is to inspire, educate, and empower you with cultural knowledge. We'll also have conversations dealing with social justice, mental health, and the all-around truth. So if you're bold enough to hear the truth, then you're listening to the right podcast. Let's find out what that one question is with your host, Lion Flood.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Today is the day, right? Every day we get a new day to start something new, something exciting in our worlds. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it. And without any further ado, I would need you to put your hands together for our guest coming to the stage, Mr. Oliver. And I should have asked. I didn't do this, but the last name, I want to make sure I pronounce this right because I know some people put a little flavor on it. You got to tell us, sir, how to pronounce it. I'm going to say Marcelle. But without any further ado, we have Mr. Oliver Marcelle coming to the stage.
Yes, indeed. Hey, listen, you nailed it. Perfect. Marcelle, that's the last name, man. Thank you, bro. This is awesome, man. Loving the intro. I was in here like, man, play that again. Let's do it. The good stuff, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here. And it's one of those things on this journey. I love looking at things in a journey type of way, right? And I said, okay, I'm starting this podcasting thing and I'm learning it. It's a whole new field and realm for me. And I said, I wanted to be so many different things. And one day I just said, just be me. Just be me. I love the liveliness. I tried the soft music and I said, no, it's not who I am. People can tell when you're not who you are. So to start off with that, how about you start off by talking to the listeners, letting them know who you are, what you're about, and then we'll dive into some of these conversations.
Indeed. Listen, so Oliver Marcelle, inner city kid, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, to Caribbean parents. And I am in a space now in my life where I never could have predicted that I would be in this space. So I've gone through a host of different things and a ton of different experiences and a myriad of mistakes that have led me to the place where I now sit in the space as an author and a speaker and a coach in the relationship building and men's empowerment spaces, using all of that context around how my life has gone throughout the 51 years of my life, using that in a way to share my journey in hopes that it will encourage and inspire others on their journey, and that it will do things. Normally I have on a t-shirt that says 2020 before hindsight when I do a lot of these podcasts, but that is the goal. The goal is for me to be able to help somebody to gain some level of clarity on the front end so that they do not run into some of the pitfalls, some of the bad relationships, some of the things and scenarios that would cause the trajectory of their lives to be thrown off in any way. And so that's who I am, man. I love what I do. I'm grateful for the opportunity to get a second chance, number one, and number two, to be able to provide that for others.
Yeah, and this is the one thing that really, like, when I speak on these issues and I talk about this and I speak with people like you, it really infuses my soul and my heart. And one of the main reasons why is because I always talk about to people, we aren't given a manual on how to construct our lives, how things should be, step one, step two, and even then it could be a little different because life throws punches at us, right? Everybody has a plan until they get punched, Tyson said. So, and I love talking about this because I used to be one of those people who would probably think, I don't need a coach. I don't need someone to tell me what to do. But yet still we would sit back and look at our mirror, in a dirty mirror, as I call it, and be like, well, why am I stuck in this situation? Why can't I get any further? Maybe because we aren't taking the time to drop our pride, to listen and to hear people and stuff. And when I started researching, and I'm gonna say this, and you might know this. When I first started researching and I learned more about you, uh, there is someone in history who has the same name, but he was
Mhm.
a baseball player.
Yep.
Okay,
Negro
you're
League.
shaking
Yep.
your head. Yeah. So I was like, wait,
Yep.
no, he ain't that
Negro League
old.
legend.
Yeah, I was like, he's
Yep.
not that old. So now, author, speaker, coach, all of those things, right? But those are titles of what we do.
Yep.
When we
Right.
break it down to the substance of saying like, hey, I've made those mistakes. I've done the things, youngsters, that you're going through. Listen to me, right? What's one of the first kind of I don't want to say steps, but processes if you're reaching out to someone sitting in their car right now? Because this is my avatar. This is the person who I speak to. Because this is
Mhm.
who I was sitting in my vehicle one day, 25 years old, pulling up to work, radio on, don't really want to go into that job, but I know I got to. I want something different. I just don't know how to get it. I don't know where to start, right? That's who I speak
Yeah.
to. What do you tell someone out there to say, hey, young lady, young guy, here's where you're going to start at with me. Here's my coaching. Here's what I want to say to you.
Yeah, so I say for first of all, the first thing I would probably say to them is that take some time, because we have to go through all of us have to go through this process of self-actualization and self-discovery. And I had to take a moment to be like, okay, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't like this. I don't like that. This is not the way it should be. This thing is not happening the way I want it to. Man, I don't want to go into this job like you said. And then I had to put all of that aside because that takes up a lot of energy in our lives. And I had to say to myself, okay, wait a minute. What kind of man do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What are my goals? What are my aspirations? What are the things that I believe will fulfill me and will allow me to make impact on the world? And I had to start at that moment, because sometimes we want to start real big. We want to already have the plan. We want to see the plan being executed, but it starts with a moment that happens in here that allows you to say to yourself, okay, wait a minute. This is how I want to show up. This is the impact that I want to have. This is the outcome that I want to get. And then now you start to craft a plan, and coming to me is about crafting that plan. Now, can I help you make a decision like that? Yes. But it's really something that has to happen inside of you before you're even willing to open up your heart and mind to whatever the next process is. And so I would tell that person sitting in their car right now, listen, for one moment, stop assessing the current situation and begin to identify what you want to see next, how you want to show up, what is the impact you want to have on the world, and what is the outcome. And then let's talk about how we get there. Because it's one thing to say, I want a beautiful house, but
Yeah.
it's another thing to sit down with an architect and say, okay, I want the door right here. I think the bathroom should be here, and create a blueprint that you can then begin to build off of.
Wow. And it is such a truth. I'm reaching for some project. And when you were talking about that, it was something that I was working on earlier today. And my wife and I, we always say, what are we going to progress on? Right. And it's a little something for the listeners. You won't be able to see this, but the viewers will. But this is something that we have, and it's called Money Date Handbook. Right. And
Mm,
with that, it's like the blueprint that you were speaking on, in which when I go through this, we have pieces of thing on here the viewers will see. It's our assets. We put down bank accounts,
mhm.
we put down what we're savings, we put down, but it's the steps in which you're speaking of, instead of just saying I
Yeah.
want the house, right? We're talking
Right.
about our next goals. Yeah, but what are the steps that we're going to need to get there, right? We need to take X amount to put in this account, put in that,
Right.
diversify. And those are things we're learning, and I absolutely love that, because when that, again, I go back to that dirty mirror. And it's one of the toughest things I think for people to do in general, is to look themselves in that mirror
Yeah.
and say, what am I doing wrong? We can blame everyone else, right? And sometimes life throws us things, and things are unfair, whatever, but you still got to get back up on your feet, and you still got to keep moving
You have
on,
to.
right? And so
You have
in
to.
your books, in the books you've written, I want you to talk a little bit about that, because
Sure.
here's one thing I say in reference to that, right? And something that I've learned. we all learn differently. Sometimes people have to take and find which way that they learn best. Some people love reading, which helps them learn, maybe audiobook. And I know we were talking about that earlier, right? Some people are
Yeah.
kinetic, touch, they need to see. So if for people who love reading and want to find more about your book, talk a little bit about that. And why did you write them? How did you, you know, kind of narrow down those subjects and who are they written for?
Sure. I'll show you the one that I love the most. So the one folk who are viewing, they can see this. It's called "Overcoming the Man Laws for the Man That Wants to Be His Best, Despite What He Was Taught." We have a couples journal as well, but this subject of men is near and dear to my heart, and you can get that on Amazon. There's different places where you can get that. The thing that I love about this, and it's I'm sharing my journey, like I said in the beginning, right? And so the book takes you through that self discovery piece that I just talked about. And I share with you my journey of self discovery in several areas that I grappled with: leadership, mental stamina, relationships, faith, trust, respect, altruism, and authenticity. And I talk about my journey of self discovery in those areas and how it's important that we as men, as people, let's just say people, but it's for men, so I have a heart for men. We need to take people through this process. It's a four-step process. It's observation, training, execution, and feedback. And what that allows you to do now for that person, that I'm speak to that 25-year-old again that's in the car, once you determine, okay, here is how I want to show up. Here's the impact that I want to have. And here is the outcome that I'm looking for. That piece right there is the mindset piece. And often we do a lot of work in behavioral change, but we don't do a lot of work with mindset change. And behavioral change without mindset change is not sustainable long term. So the next piece is now getting around somewhere where somebody where you can shadow your future, because now you know how you want to show up. So now I need to find somebody who shows up that way and begin to shadow them and begin to train, if you will, from them, and then execute some of those lessons that I'm learning, and then be able to come back to that person for feedback. And I believe that we as a people should be doing that for each other, because once that 25-year-old makes that decision that they want to do something different, that next step can be very daunting. And so to have somebody like me come along and be like, "Hey, bro, this is what you want to do? Okay, let me show you how I did it. Let me show you what I did. Let me share with you the mistakes that I made." And then allow you to take those lessons and begin to execute and so that you can see that building, if you will,
Yeah.
begin to take shape.
Yeah, and it hits so much home because, and I use this reference because I'm in the process of beginning to think about writing a book, right? My aunt has told me for years I need to do this, right?
Do it,
Memorialize
man.
my
Do it.
life and kind of stuff. And so I'm working on a process. And I sit back and I listen to that because my viewers and my listeners know I'm very transparent. I'm authentic and I talk my life because there's no perfection. I can't pretend to do that. Made many mistakes and I worked through them. And most people will know that I'm retired military and everything, but there was a portion of my life that I don't speak about as as loudly. And but now I'm starting to do it, not because I was ashamed, but because I just it was something I put in the back of my mind. There was a
Mhm.
transition when I first got out the service, and I was like, because I was in the Air Force prior, then I got out, and then I went back into the Marine Corps about 3 years later. And that 2.5, 3 year time period, I couldn't adjust to civilian life. I was
Mm.
so used to being structured. I'm neurodivergent, probably ADHD, all of that. So structure to me was so prevalent. I needed it. I got in
Mhm.
civilian wear and I was like, wait, I gotta decide on what I need to wear. Wait a second, in the military, we just want the same thing, right?
Right.
But within that
Right.
time frame, I became homeless.
Mm.
Went through a lot of mental issues because I just could not adapt. And I wouldn't tell any of my friends and family members. And one day I broke down and told my aunt. But within that time period, it's that dirty mirror. What am I doing? Why am I here? Right? I had a career up, I had a career path, trajectory. And so that was that 25-year-old me. Right? That's what I was
Mm.
talking about. I was sitting there and I had a job
Yeah.
so I went back into service, finished that out, and retired from that. And but those time frames, I had that mental issue, and I went through therapy, and when I went back into the service, and it helped me. And to this day, I will proudly say, if I didn't, I would probably have been on a different path. and I've
Mm.
came through that mud and I fought through it. And so that's why I reach out to tell people. When I say the 25-year-old person, that's just that person. You could be 40, 50, you can start whatever you want in that time
Right.
frame. And within that, when you're talking to, people that's listening to you on stage, and or wherever you're speaking at in front of these people, what is the heartfelt message? What is that you kind of try to convey to that person, or people that you're speaking to, when you're narrowing it down to them and say, hey, this is why all my coaching or what my services can do? um, because and I'll say the last thing. When I was looking at your Instagram page recently, ladies and gentlemen, go check it out. OC Marcelle. We'll make sure we
Yep.
put that in
Yep.
the
That's my
notes and
personal
everything.
Instagram. Yep. Mhm.
I shouldn't even say that. Maybe you didn't want them to go there.
No, no, no. That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine. I have two. I have two, but that's my personal one. So yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
gotcha.
Yeah.
We'll get you to put another one there too. But there's one thing in the writing that you have, and I say this also. Yours was a little different. I'm looking at it here. It says it's okay to be vulnerable, men. And I
Yeah.
used to always say it's okay to not be okay, especially in the black culture. As men, we are hit with this. You can't show weakness. You can't
Yeah.
cry. You can't, and that has led to so much destruction of our families, our homes, and what are you trying to convey to those people that are wanting to listen to you?
And that's one of the major things that I'm trying to convey because like you said, we're inundated with these ideologies and hence the name of the book, Overcoming the Man Laws, because you can think of these man laws that have been detrimental to our success as husbands, as fathers, as men in general, and it's time to understand, and not only understand but accept the fact that it is okay to, like you said, to not be okay. Vulnerability is more of a superpower than people think. It takes an extreme amount of self control and self awareness and self discipline to and strength to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is not just about just you spilling your guts. But vulnerability is about you being aware of who you are, aware of what the needs are based on who you are, and being comfortable in finding and or developing a space that's safe enough for you to be able to express those and to be able to process those. And so one of the main things that I say to people all the time, whether it's in video or whether it's on stage or whether it's with coaching, is that adjustments are not a threat to your authenticity. It is okay to make adjustments. It's okay to take the things that may not have been the greatest in your life. I call them L's. So take those losses, quote unquote, and flip them into lessons. It's okay. You don't have to be stuck where you are. The things that you have done, the things that you have experienced, they do not define who you are. You get the opportunity to now, like we're going back to the beginning, you get the opportunity to identify how you want to show up. You get to identify what is the kind of person you want to be. You can control that. And then it's okay to find yourself in a space where you open yourself up for that level of support, that level of guidance, that level of nurturing, that level of safety that it allows you to unload some things. Listen, man, I'll tell you, for me, I'm 51 years old. And it literally was not until in my 40s that I started to unpack some things that I felt like I couldn't unpack. They weren't, I didn't feel like it was okay to unpack them. I grew up in a culture where there were just certain things you didn't talk about. You didn't lay on somebody's couch and tell them all your deep, dark yearnings and desires, right? You kept it all in, you sucked it up, you had to man up. And the thing that I want to convey to people the most is that you don't have to live like that. You just don't have to live like that. There are individuals who are waiting to share their story with you, and for you to write a book to do that, man. I highly encourage you to do that because sharing your story is often the catalyst for somebody else's development, man. And so that's what I share often when I get on stage, especially if I'm talking to men. We're talking about crafting blueprints. We're talking
Right.
about the accepting the fact that it's okay to process with somebody if the space is safe and the space is welcoming, and that you don't have to. One big thing, man, I was afraid of was that somebody was going to always be trying to change me. So
Mm.
if I made some kind of adjustment, oh nah, they trying to take something away. They trying to make me into somebody. No, adjustments are not a threat to your authenticity. Not at all.
Yeah, you got to pivot. That episode of Friends where they were moving the couch, and he's like, "Pivot,
Yeah,
pivot." You got to be
yeah.
able to adjust. The world, your plan is one way. The world says, "Nope, we got something
Hmm.
different," right? But you get knocked down, but
Yep.
just get back up. Heavyweight champions of the world is only the heavyweight because they got back up one more time than
That's right.
everyone else, right? And it's
Yeah, and get
amazing when you
around
see.
some folks, man. Get around some folks who are attempting to walk that path.
Yes.
Because one thing we try to do, and I'm guilty of this, is we try to do it by ourselves. So I have
Mm.
that moment of self discovery. I have that moment where I'm identifying what I feel like needs to take place. But then I'm like, all right, so that involves me breaking down these 10 walls. All right, I'm gonna break them down myself. No, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Get around some folk who are doing the same thing that can give you some level of support. That just, if nothing else, allows you to see that you're not alone in this space.
Yeah, and it gives you some insight and some motivations. And people would, when I would talk to young youth groups or anything, and it's like, "Hey, how did you get that?" And I said, I surrounded myself with people who were thinking differently than me. I didn't
Yeah,
keep hanging out with the people who only spoke about going to the club or grabbing some drinks this weekend. Hey, that's fun. Let's do it. But let's also talk about how I can get out of this 800 square foot apartment if that's what you choose. Some people are happy with that.
right.
But I wanted more. And if I wanted more, I needed to know how to get more. So I
How to get it.
spoke and
That's
I
right.
networked and I went to networking events and I just had a pen and a pad. And they were like, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm learning." "No, no, what do you do for work?" "Learning." That's what I'm
Learning.
doing. Because I want to be in a situation where you're at recently and just a small little kind of thing. And there was a moment where I started to learn the difference. I don't want to say between bragging and stuff, but and the story I read one time was with Steve Harvey, and I'll say this and I'll get back to that question. Is that Steve Harvey would post pictures a lot. And he talked about this, about his travel and his everything. And when his friend said, "Hey, you should stop doing that because you're boasting and you're showing off," and he stopped for a while. Then he said, "No, I'm doing it because I'm motivating someone who says I want to be in a situation to be able to do that. I'm not bragging. I worked hard to get here." And
Right.
recently an opportunity came up for my wife and I to go to a conventions called UCW, Ultimate UWC Ultimate Wealth Conference, where Les
Mhm.
Brown is going to be speaking. I've always wanted to listen to Les Brown and I've never been able to. And we looked up the tickets, and the tickets were really, pricey, right? But in that
Mhm.
moment, this was something I wanted, and no hesitation, we were like, boom, and we purchased two tickets. Wouldn't have been able to do that before, right? But because I had that
Mhm.
coach, I had that guide, someone to talk to me. Hey, you need to put money here, diversify here, do this, and don't take money out of this account at XYZ. It really worked for me. So I want to jump into something else that you talked about a second ago when you went into relationships, right? You also
Mhm.
talk about
Mhm.
that being one
Yep.
of the core, that being a guide, find a partner, no matter whom they are within your life, to help
Mhm.
you. What are your thoughts? What are your vision on that to have that strong backbone with you?
Man, there's two things I would say. One is that we have to start to look within ourselves. We really
Mm.
have to do the work that allows us to be the type of individual that we want. And I here's the way I say it. People have heard me say it this way often. You should not demand something you have not first developed. So if you're looking for trustworthiness, if you're looking for honesty, if you're looking for respect, if you're looking for emotional support, if you're looking for intimacy, you need to look within yourself and begin to develop those things and characteristics within yourself. And then you need to also recognize that your a relationship is a team. It's a team sport. It's a team effort. When you sign up to be in a relationship, you are signing up now to be part of an entity. And so you can't go into an entity with a selfish, singular kind of mindset. It's important that you are now shifting your thought process to really digging into a scenario where duality is supposed to reign. And it's tough to do that if you haven't done the inner work on yourself to now begin to think differently, begin to have the desire to want to put someone else's needs ahead of your own, not at your own expense, but ahead of you in terms of not being selfish, and to develop these characteristics and traits that allow you to really navigate a relationship successfully, because often we don't do that. Again, using myself as an experience, as an example, I didn't get into marriage for the right reasons. I got into marriage with very selfish reasons, very self-centered ideas and ideologies around what this relationship, this marriage was going to do for me. And it wasn't until I had that pivotal moment where I was like, wait a minute, it's not about me. That's not what this is even about. This is about me signing up now to learn somebody else, to identify what their most important emotional needs are, to really be intentional about consistently meeting those needs. And then she did the same, because remember, it's an entity. So it's not one sided. When that took place, my entire marriage changed. It changed. And so those are the two things. Now there's some very specific things that we do within those umbrellas, but those two umbrellas really center around you being very intentional about working on who you are as an individual, and around your perspective as it relates to marriage, because and relationships, because the problem is a lot of folk come to me and they don't like the results of their approach. Man, this is not happening. This ain't happening. I've been trying to do this and this is not happening. And the question I always ask them is a question that makes them think about their perspective, which they've never thought about before. Here's the trajectory of that. Your approach typically follows your perspective. So, however you think about a certain thing, or however you view a certain thing, however you view a certain person, or think about this certain group, your approach is going to be a reflection of that. If you don't like the results of your approach, yes, you do need to change your approach, but you also need to look at your perspective. And so it's about perspective change, really looking at the heart. Again, how do I want to show up? What kind of husband do I want to be? What kind of man do I want to be? And then working to develop those things. And then the other stuff just kind of follows
Follows
as a
in, yeah.
result. And then we do, like I said, we do some digging into that, right? There's some
Yeah.
communication pieces, intimacy building pieces. There's some specific things that you really got to look at, but it starts with you having that perspective around, man, I want to be a loving husband. I want to be a good listener. I want to be supportive. I want to help build emotional intimacy. And then now I have to be like, okay, am I doing that for myself?
Mm.
So
Wow.
that I can come to the table with those things, and come to the table with a perspective that allows me to see her needs, and then make it my business to be intentional about meeting those needs consistently.
Wow. There's so much you just dropped there. And I sit back and I'm like visualizing myself going through those things also, because before I met my wife, I will absolutely say it. And I've told her and we've talked about it. I wasn't ready for marriage. If
Hmm.
I had met her back in my 20s, cause I'm 45, we didn't get married for 6 years now. So 39, 40, roughly around there. But back in my 20s, my early 30s, nowhere would we be together right now, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to love. And I didn't know that until one time I was talking with my sister. And my sister always said, "Hey, I love you." And I could never say I love you. But it wasn't because I didn't love her. I didn't know it. It just wasn't taught that coming up. I wasn't shown
Hmm.
love like that. I wouldn't even give a
Yeah.
hug. It was like hugging me. What? Ew, right? And through the years, it's like I want different. Like you were saying, you gotta want it.
Hmm.
My perspective,
Yep.
I needed to change it. I want to be loved. I want to be hugged. It doesn't mean I'm weak. It doesn't mean. So I learned how to do it and to say it and force it. And I met my wife and we worked through that. And an exercise that I love asking people to do sometimes is when we're talking, and I will say, what do you love? Name some things you love, and people will name a lot of things, and they will rattle off a lot of things. And I'll say, within that statement, within that sentence, you didn't say yourself. And most people will never say, "I love me." They would
Yep.
never say it. And it's not because they're trying to be self centered or anything like that. It's just they don't think of it in that way, right? But you got to love yourself enough to say, I need to change my perspective, like you're saying. I need to change what I want to be able to bring to someone. And those little small things, I caught myself the other day, and my wife said, "Thank you for something." Like we were in the car, and the sun was beaming in the eyes, so I took the visor, and I switched it to my side, but it was
Mm,
still coming into her eyes. And then I took my hat off and I held my hat on the other section, which then
mm,
shaded her. Just a little thing. I'm like, yo, the sun's my wife's eye. Let me just work to change that, right? And we work to build our love. I
yeah,
want to see my partner grow like that, and this is such a touching thing that, and I really appreciate you for bringing this to light because these are things that we need to build for our community, for anyone who's listening, but for anyone who's in a position where they want to change themselves. So
yeah,
yeah. What
yeah.
other?
That.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say too, man. I'll give the folk who are listening a relationship hack, if you will,
Uh oh.
right?
Here we go.
Because here's the thing: all of what we just said, it sounds great, and it is great. But again, sometimes the question is, okay, I hear you, bro, but where? How do I start? Like, where do I start that? Like, you talking about looking inward, you talking about doing this, doing that. How do we start doing that? And often, what I'll have couples do is work on their experiential intimacy. And experiential intimacy is just what you probably think it is. It is creating experiences that allow your level of intimacy or your bond, overall bond, to grow. And they don't have to be big things. They can be, but they don't have to be. They What has to happen is that they need to be consistent. And what you're looking at is experiences that put you in the same place and give you a common goal. So let me give you one in the low end of the spectrum. Well, not low end, but I'll give you one end of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum is cooking a meal together, just to meet that criteria that I just said. You're both in the same place. So you're in the same place, you're in the kitchen or wherever you're cooking the meal, and you're cooking a meal you want to eat, so you're cooking together. When you consistently create these kinds of experiences, no matter what they are, watching movies, taking weekend trips, going on drives, going on walks, whatever these experiences are, if you are consistent in those, you will begin to see your bond grow. Because all of the other things that we would work on with a couple, whether it be communication and effective components um, of productive conversation, going through explanation, clarification, negotiation, going through conflict resolution and interest versus position, and all these different things that we would take a couple through, you would begin to see yourself organically growing in those areas because you're talking more, you're having fun, you're laughing. The emotional intimacy piece is growing. The physical intimacy piece that's non sexual, I'm talking about proximity. You're in close proximity with each other. That's growing. The All of these other things are growing in a very organic way because you're simply agreeing to be consistent about the time and intentional about the time that you spend together. So start there. Start doing that. Start spending time. Start creating these experiences, and you'll begin to see a difference if you're consistent.
Yeah, it's the little small things of doing it over and over again to show the person you love them and you care more.
Yep.
And a little exercise that my wife and I used to do and we'll do it occasionally, right? But and I say this, and I say this to men, women, whomever's listening and wanting to do something similar to this. You got to come with an open mind. You can't keep
Yes.
thinking it's that my partner has to change or has to adjust something. We would take a piece of paper and we would say, I want to write down three things you want from me, three things you need from me, and be flat out honest. If it's hurt, it hurts. But if you truly want your relationship to grow and get better, you need to be ready for that, right? And my wife would write down something. And it may not even be things you know. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness. You just needed me to hug you today? More right? Just something, hey, I just need you to hug me in the morning. I just need you to, tell me my hair looks good or something. That's all that and to them it's something small. But that can mean the
Mm-hmm.
world to making your partner feel so much better. And they may tell you something that, hey, I need you to when we're having a discussion or argument, I need you just to breathe for a second before you respond. Right? It could be something totally different, and those that proximity thing you talk about, we do something in which we have a book that's called the Adventure Book. You can get it
Mm-hmm.
online. I have no affiliation with it, but it was really interesting, and we did this especially during the pandemic. In the book they have little scratch off things, and it's date ideas that you have to scratch off, and then they tell each other what to do. They're very simple. One, you had to be blindfolded and your partner had to use your hands to cook. So to force you to
Nice.
do something, right? The other one told us, and they have price differences. So that one will tell you it's you can only spend $5 on this date, $15.
Mhm.
So it's not a whole lot. One of them that we haven't done yet and we need to do is we have to go bowling with the bumpers up, and then whoever gets the least amount of points or something wins or something, right?
Got you. Okay.
One of them told us to take $10, go to the dollar store, and make a picnic, have a little picnic date with only $10. You can only use what you get out the dollar store. We bought a little basket. We bought some little things to put in it, and then we bought like some bread from the dollar store and a couple pieces of meat or something. But it was
I
just
love it.
reconnecting us,
That's
not
right.
spending $200 on a meal here and there. The little small things we do is when we're at dinner at certain points, we'll take our phones, turn them off, or put them face down. Or if something important is coming out, we'll let each other know, hey, I'm expecting an important text. I might have to look at my phone. Just communicating with each other. And my last thing I say on that, and I'll get back right into what you say on that. Some people say this. I disagree. Some people say, a lot of people say, communication is the key.
Hmm.
I believe communication is very important, but I believe understanding is the key because you can
Okay.
communicate all day, but if you don't understand where your person's coming from, or understand the
Hmm.
hurt, or I can talk to you, we can talk, but now we're just talking, we're not really listening, right?
Right.
Hey, Brick, oh, I didn't know you felt that way when I did that. Oh, I didn't know it made you feel this way. If whatever, right? And I believe that's so important. Like, man, look, you don't open up a can of worms here for.
No, that listen, that's good, man, because I'm glad you said that because the issue that I have often with people when they talk about things like communication in general is that it's very conceptual in nature and it's not tangible. It's not something tangible that you can actually hold on to and take and implement right away. We've all heard communication is the key to a successful relationship. The understanding piece that you talked about is a component of that communication, right? So it's really not just about talking. There's all kinds of communication. There's nonverbal, there is verbal, there's different kinds of communication, but within that communication umbrella, now you have to look at the components. There's an active listening component, there's an explanation component, there's a clarification component, which helps with the understanding piece. There's a negotiation component of your conversation, depending on what the scenario is. And so I love that you made that distinction because it's not just about you talking more. Yes, that will be beneficial, especially for couples who have not been talking to each other. Just getting out there and saying more words, yes, that will help, but that is only one component of effective communication and productive conversation. So I'm glad that you brought that out.
Yeah, it's one of those things I really harken on because especially in African American black culture, we have this imagery of like we have to be so tough, and I'd rather
Hmm.
lose something than to break down and seeing maybe someone about to walk through that door and saying no, I don't want you to go, right? Our
Right.
pride says go, fine, I'll be okay then. Hey, if that's what it comes down to, but so
Yep.
let everyone know where they can find you, what some things that you're offering. I know we were talking about some group coaching aspirations you got
Yes.
coming up, some
Yeah.
workshops that you've got, and I think you're getting back on the podcast road there, so talk about that and let them know where they can find you and hear all that stuff.
Absolutely. So for the marriage stuff, it's Denali, DEN. So it's first three letters of my wife's name, Denise. OLI, first three letters of my name. So DENOLI LLC, Denali LLC, all social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. It's all that. TikTok, it's all Denali LLC. So if you look up Denali LLC, you will find us. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me, Oliver Marcelle. You can find me on Instagram and on Facebook as well. On my personal accounts, I do a lot of stuff there as well. And we're coaches and speakers primarily, so we do a significant amount of speaking. So if you're looking for individuals to come in and talk to men, or you're looking for someone to come in and talk to couples, communication, intimacy building, effective conversation, conflict management. All of those types of things fall under the umbrella of what we do with couples. We would be glad to come in and speak to your organization or to your church group or to whatever entity you may have. Also, when you follow us, you'll see that there's a podcast, there is a YouTube channel where there is a significant amount of free information and stuff out there for you to digest at your leisure. That will be coming up. We've took a hiatus on some of those things, and so one show that I love on YouTube is called Inside the Relationship. One of my favorite YouTube shows that we offer is called Inside the Relationship. We'll be starting season 2 of that coming up shortly. There are new episodes of the podcast, which is called Relationship Trade Secrets. New episodes of that are in the works as well, so you'll be hearing more about that. And then from the coaching side, we work with couples one on one. We also work with groups. And so we are gearing up for a group coaching experience that is going to kick off in January. You'll hear more about that. Leading up to that, we're going to do some free workshops in the month of December. We're going to do a free workshop on communication. We're going to do a free workshop on intimacy that will lead into the group experience that we'll be doing in January. So, listen, we would love to have you as a part of our community. Come join us, come add to the conversation, because it's not just about us giving stuff away, it's about us learning from you as well. It's a two-sided relationship here. So come join us. We would love to have you at Denoli LLC everywhere.
There you go. And all of those will be listed in the show notes, so you'll have access to click them, to find them, ladies and gentlemen, who are listening, and also our viewers when we post those in there. And everyone who knows me, I do not believe in this crab in a bucket theory, right? I believe in, there's enough out there, right? So I'm putting this information out there. I'm putting it out there. Why? Because I don't care. If you speak to me, I may not be able to help you, but I can refer you to someone. I may hear someone who says, you know what? This might be a great thing for Oliver. Hey, let me give you his information, or go to you listen to his page. But you've got to want to do it. When
Yep.
you was talking about earlier, where do I start? It starts with you. You
Yep.
got to want to. It's a fire that has to be within you. Someone could tell you, hey, you just got to go knock on that door. Knock on that door, and information to be right there as soon as it opens. You got to take the step to go do it. And this is why I love talking to this, and even down to like the mental thing, and I'll get ready to wrap this up. I was talking to a gentleman who's going to have a phone interview or something like that. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I said, put on a shirt and a tie. He's like, why? I'm just going to be
Mhm.
talking on the phone. No, 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 no. Put on a
Yeah.
pair of pants like
About
you're
this.
going to the interview, right? It's going to
Mhm.
make you feel better. Don't lay down on the couch when you're talking. Sit up. Have a pen and a pad. Yeah, man, you just got to
Yeah.
want it, right? So,
You gotta want it. And I love that you said that too, because here's the thing. Often we don't know, going back to and just taking it full circle, back to that 25-year-old that you mentioned, right? Often many of us don't make the moves that we need to make, even when we recognize we might need to make them, because we don't know what's beyond that moment. We don't know how it's going to work out. We don't know what the steps are. I know I want this big mansion, but I don't know anything about architecture, and I don't know anything about bricks, and I don't know all of these things that you start to think about that cause you to be like, oh, well, you know what? I don't know enough, so I'm just going to forget about it.
yeah,
And some of that in terms of mental stamina is not about, I tell guys this all the time. You do not have to know the steps. You have to be willing to take the steps. Somebody is going to come along because of your willingness. You're going to start looking around, and they're going to be individuals who want to take you through observation, training, execution, and feedback, and will help you with the steps. Don't say, oh, well, I'm not doing it because I don't know the steps. That's the only requirement for those of you who are listening and not sure about what's happening next in your life. The only requirement right now, there will be more requirements, but the only one right now is that you have to want to take the steps. We'll figure out the rest. I promise you. There's people around like me, like you, who will help do that. Just say you want to do it. And then what you talked about, put yourself in the position to receive what those steps are. You told the guy, listen, put on a shirt, put on a tie. It's not about the fact that when you put on a shirt and tie, you'll automatically be this businessman,
Yeah.
but you will feel a certain way that will open the pathway mentally and psychologically for you to receive whatever's coming next. And that's where you start.
Whew, dropping it, right? I'm gonna leave it there on last words. I'm not saying anything else. Hold it for 1 second. I'm gonna wrap this up and get some of these sponsors just paid. I'm gonna be right back with you, sir.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Thank you so very much for tuning in to this episode. I just can't stress this enough. As Oliver was saying, start the process 1 foot, right? That's all it takes. Just do something for yourself. If you're sitting in a situation where you're like, I don't know what to do, there's several groups. This information is so readily available now. Google it. Join a Facebook group, a social media group that's positive in your area, right? Network in that area. Go to your local church. Go to somewhere and reach out to someone. All right. So I just can't even say anything else. But as I always tell you all, just keep living while you are alive.
Thank you for listening to Just One Question. I know you enjoyed the show because you made it this far. If you want to hear more, subscribe, share, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Now, what's your one question?